Welcome to the first edition of Talk of the Town. It's a discussion panel format show about hot issues for people of Winchester. And in this particular edition, we're going to talk about outfoxed and the possible presence of media bias. A little while ago in Winchester, Kim Whitaker, held a meeting, I guess, of about 60 people as part of a nationwide launch of this documentary, Outfoxed, which really examines just how balanced or lack of balance is present in the Fox News network. Let me introduce the rest of the panel here before we go on. Tony Shanella of the Winchester Star. Thank you for coming, Tony.
Thank you.
We've got Michael Litchfield, who also has seen this documentary. We have Kim Whitaker. Thank you very much, Kim, for coming. Peter Coccaluto, who also attended the first showing. And we have Representative Paul Casey. Thanks so much.
Thanks
for being
the
on the show,
invite,
Paul.
Thank you for inviting me.
Fox News has gained quite a reputation since its inception for its trademark, fair and balanced. It's been attacked recently for having such a trademark, for not being quite honest with that trademark. Fox News is owned by Rupert Murdoch's business interests, and Rupert Murdoch has a long and established reputation for clouding the issue between news and opinion. And this show sort of goes in to examine that in depth, and that is of concern to not just people in Winchester, but everyone involved in the upcoming presidential election. Walter Cronkite was quoted as saying, "It's unusual in this country to have a news channel that's so clearly committed to one party." And I guess that's a little bit of the focus here. With the format of the show is we're going to show you clips from the show that also will be later on aired several times over the next few weeks. This whole WinCam channel is a good example of access cable TV that really provides a unique opportunity for people to provide alternative views to commercial cable TV. And we're making good use of that, and we hope this is going to be a prime example of adding balance to that. So now we're going to turn to the first clip, and then we'll move on to comment and discussion about each clip as we look at it. Thank you.
In the great 1974 film The Godfather 2, there's a scene about halfway through where Hyman Roth and Michael Corleone and all the American gangsters are gathered on a patio in Havana. And it's Hyman Roth's 67th birthday. And he's giving a slice of the cake each gangster. He's got Louis from Chicago, you run the Copacabana. Frankie, you get the prostitutes. He's dividing up the island among all the American gangsters. And appropriately enough, the birthday cake has the outline of Cuba on it. So he's giving him a slice of Cuba. And while Hyman Roth is doing this, he says, "Isn't it great to be in a country with a government that respects private enterprise?" And that's how media policies have been done in the United States for the past 50 years. And it's increasing in the last 20 years. Extraordinarily powerful lobbyists duke it out behind closed doors for the biggest slice of the cake. The public knows nothing about it, it doesn't participate. And that's the problem we face.
Media is the nervous system of a democracy. If it's not functioning well, the democracy can't function. We're heading toward an election where most people are never going to be in a room with Kerry or Bush. What they learn about the candidates will be what the media shows them or tells them, decides not to show, not to tell.
People are faced with critical choices about the future of the country when they go into the voting booth. And I go in, and I have been, through the course of a campaign cycle, subject to false, distorted caricaturing, and I may not even know where it's coming from because often there's an echo effect off places like cable and like radio, and those wrong pieces of information are repeated and repeated. By the time it reaches me, I don't even know what the source was. This is the environment we're living in, and it's fundamentally undermining democracy, which is based on knowing some good and solid information so I can make an informed choice.
See the properties Rupert Murdoch owns around the world, the strong conservative point of view that those properties often reflect, it's different than ABC or CBS or NBC. Sure, they reflect a point of view, but not nearly as strong and not nearly as consistently from one ideological perspective.
Murdoch actually bought the station in 1985 and actually left us alone for at least the first 3 years of his ownership, partly because we were so successful and prosperous that there was no reason to monkey with us.
At WTTG, our success insulated us to a certain degree.
And it was kind of like being in an office and seeing people come down with the flu around you. We knew the flu eventually might reach us, but we were hoping if we took enough vitamins that we'd never catch the flu.
It was clear during those years that Murdoch, who had absolutely adored Ronald Reagan, adored him, had a lot of admiration for the group of Republicans that controlled Congress and certainly on Capitol Hill.
We received an order from one of Murdoch's apparatchiks, if you will, that we should cut away from our newscast and start carrying a fawning tribute to Ronald Reagan that was airing at the Republican convention. We were stunned because up until that point we were allowed to do legitimate news, and suddenly we were ordered from the top to carry propaganda, carry Republican right-wing propaganda.
There was a cultural underpinning to what Murdoch wanted. Race issues, AIDS. I constantly remember complaints that there was too much being done on AIDS. He also couldn't stand the Kennedys.
Ted Kennedy was a longtime opponent of Rupert Murdoch, and one celebrated occasion, we were ordered to run a long, uncut piece from a current affair that was rehashing the whole matter of Chappaquiddick. It had zero news value. We were told you had to run this thing uncut. You could not even edit it down and just run a snippet of it. I think they evolved in later years, especially after Roger Ailes took over and really got the Fox News Channel up and running, into a far more sophisticated kind of operation. What we saw in my era was really the birth of this sort of thing and the roots of what came later.
It was quite clear when they founded the Fox network that they intended to be a conservative organization, beyond conservative, a far right-wing organization.
The People Survey is interesting because you're looking at questions of basic true-false, kind of factual nature. Did we find weapons of mass destruction in Iraq? These are very simple questions with very simple answers. And what the survey found was that the more likely you were to watch Fox News Channel, the more likely you were to have completely incorrect assumptions about these things.
All the research shows a very high correlation in the case of Fox News with people watching it with having a very confused notion of the world on one hand, especially of foreign policy in the Middle East, and also being strongly supportive of the government in power. And this is an extraordinarily disturbing trend for the media. I mean, for any self-respecting journalist, if you're told the more people consume your media, the less they'll know about the subject and the more they'll support government policy. And that's exactly the worst thing any journalist would ever want to hear or should want to hear.
In terms of Fox overall, I think we have got to appreciate, and when we look at them, is to understand that this is an adjunct of the Republican Party.
What Fox specializes in is punditry, basically getting marching orders from the Republican National Committee or some political operative, and then having people pontificate about it, have guests come on and talk about it, have pseudo-experts come on and discuss it.
Hi, Kim. After you've seen that clip, tell me a little bit about what motivated you to organise that first viewing of Outfoxed in your home. I believe there were like 50 or 60 people were there. As a matter of fact, some of my family were there too, and I came. And tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. I've been a member of Move On for about 8 months now, and as a member you get regular updates. And one of the things that they were trying to do when Robert Greenwald first came out with this documentary was get some grassroots viewing of this, and that's really a way that Move On has very successfully put forward some of these films in the past. I feel very passionately about the job that the media is doing, and in most cases is not doing, to get the news and the information across, especially in this critical time with the election coming up. So I thought that this would be a wonderful opportunity to open our house to other Move On members. I've seen 2 other films done by Robert Greenwald. I know he does excellent work. And I happened to be on the Cape on vacation when this email came out, but Move On made it so easy to organize the event. Before I knew it, we had 50 people that had signed up as a result of an email that they distributed, introducing the film and asking people if they would like to come and view it. And we had calls up until the very day of the party with people trying to come to our home and see it, because so many other homes had already sold out, if you will, and there was standing room only. So there was quite a bit of enthusiasm for this. And from the people that I spoke with that night and leading up to the event itself, people feel very strongly and passionately that they want to make sure that we can rely on the media to give us the information in its entirety without a bias. And many people feel that the media is coming up very short on that.
Yes. Now, is that just Fox, or are we talking about a lot of the media, a lot of the broadcast and other cable TV stations? Do you see any fairness and balance?
I think Fox in particular is guilty of partisan bias. But frankly, I've been very disappointed across the board with the way that the media has dealt with many issues. And I've become more acutely aware of this in just the last 10 months since I've become more politically involved. And I find myself actually channel surfing, going from the cable stations to the network news stations, and comparing that against print journalism to see who's doing a good job, are the issues being fully explored. And what I'm finding is that there's people are gravitating towards the sensational news stories. And very rarely do the news anchors get themselves involved to the extent that they are fully vetting the facts and challenging people on their assertions. I feel like oftentimes even some of the best anchors and journalists sit back and let the talking points from either party rule the day.
Go unchallenged.
Go unchallenged,
Yeah.
and it doesn't serve anybody when that happens.
Yeah, well, thank you. Michael, what are your feelings? What drew you to this? Thank you.
I'd like to drew me to this meeting was, again, I'm very concerned about where this country's going in this upcoming election, and I've kind of taken it upon myself to try to, whether they're going to vote Republican, Democrat, Nader, doesn't matter to me. I just want to make sure people vote. And so I'm doing everything I can to raise discussion, raise awareness, and get people to think and vote. Critical, they do it in that order. Think and then vote. And regarding the clip, I think there are 2 very interesting observations. I'll try to be brief for me, but I think rather than, in this part of the clip, there's really not a lot of facts necessarily about Fox News Network. I think it's also important to make it that this is really about the Fox News Network, not quite so much about the Fox Network in general, I think. It's also where I think the focus should be placed in terms of looking at what's happening. But I think in this clip, 2 very important points are made. One, for a democracy to work, we have to have citizens who are informed and vote. And those citizens need to be informed through the media, one way or another. They can't talk to Bush or Kerry. They have to trust that their media outlets are giving them news. And the second most important point made, I think, in this first clip is how critical it is that the media remain independent and to provide an objective account of what the candidates are saying and not taint it with their own editorials. And I think it's a capitalist society. The news networks are in it to make money. They're private corporations. And it's critical that the journalists not be influenced by the business interest so that you can have independent voices. And you need to have multiple voices rather than one big monolithic megaphone. And so if there was only one media outlet in the entire country, then there'd be no, so two things. The varied voices of the media, and that the journalists are independent of the business interests, and that the democracy dies if the media is not independent. I think that's the critical thing out of the first clip.
I would agree. Tony, you're a professional newsman. I
like to think so.
I certainly believe so.
There's mixed opinions on that.
One of the most disturbing things I find about that first clip is the fact that after watching Fox, that people got raw, what appeared to be objective facts, so wrong. What's your feeling about that?
Well, I don't necessarily think it's after watching Fox, these people believe certain things in the Piper poll.
So not necessarily cause or effect.
Correct.
Right.
I mean, Fox News is definitely geared towards more conservative people. Their programming is geared towards more conservative people. A lot of their commentators are conservatives. So of course they're going to have people who are watching the programs want to watch something that's more conservative. You don't have a lot of right-wing militia types listen to NPR. In the same way, you're not going to necessarily have a lot of liberals watching Fox. A lot of people out there in the red states versus the blue states believe that the world opinion about the United States is good and that the invasion was good, regardless of how many dead Iraqis there are or dead soldiers there are. So the poll isn't really telling you this is what people learn from Fox as much as this is what people believe who watch Fox. And I think that that's a difference. The other point is, and as someone who watches Fox and has watched this video and happened to think it wasn't a bad documentary, the problem is that there are huge holes in the case that they make. And they really use selective editing in some places to make their point and make Fox look maybe worse than they are. I'm not saying that they're good. I'm not saying that they're unbiased. But whether or not they're actually that bad, that's another case as well. And I'll just close with this remark. At the height of the invasion, 4 million people were watching the network out of 300 million Americans. People are not being manipulated by Fox News. Small amounts of people are being manipulated by Fox News. A lot of those people have the opinions that are already there on Fox News. I don't think they're a danger to democracy. And I don't think that I think that the film is overly critical and biased in its own way of interpreting how bad Fox is. So,
Paul Casey, you're obviously from the Democratic end of the political spectrum. How do you feel about this? The Fox targets a young demographic because of the kind of programming, and in a very tight election, that young demographic who has not necessarily had a lot of blooding in making political choices, I would have thought could, in fact, even though it's a relatively small audience, could have an impact on the outcome.
Again, it's a matter of perception, and I'm not going to quibble one way or the other, but even when you say, Tony, on something like 300 million Americans, well, the question is, how many actually are viewing? So you said 3 to 5 million watching Fox, but really, what percentage is that of the actual viewers? So when you take a sampling, but that's what news is all about, or tabloid news, I should say. It really is who you're targeting. You nailed it on the head, David. It's an 18 to 40 classification. People who just want to be, whether it's drivel or not, they just want to be poured news of the three-legged, of the three-headed boy who is running around the neighborhood confusing people. I mean, they're going to explain that in just the right way that they intend to. And that's what brings home to the point, Michael, where you say news. Well, what is news? And in politics, really, it's not, news doesn't tend to be the details. It really doesn't, not during election time. Of course, the details of how you affect people on a day in, day out basis adds up to a cumulative track record. But election time, news is impressions. It's not details, it's impressions. What is your impression? And you can carry that over to what Fox has been doing lately, or even the tabloids have been doing to Kerry, or to Bush during the DNC. Bush was eviscerated during the DNC. But again, whose news are we talking about? And I think that Tony has kind of an interesting perspective, only because you look at Pat Purcell. He owns your newspaper, and it's not a secret. But does he send messages down to you, suggesting that, hey, this is what we want to print. This is the story we want to cover, and how does he choose his newscasters? I mean, that's kind of an interesting point. I love the fact of the move on, because whether it's pro-left, pro-right, middle, conservative, neoliberal, what. It doesn't make a difference. It's the fact that you're getting news out there. You're conversing. You are relating to people, and you're saying, hey, listen, wake up. It's a travesty that people are getting information, the majority of their information from Fox, if that's the case. It's a shame they're not going towards all different papers. People say that the Globe is the liberal water boy, or is Kennedy's water boy. But so okay, read the Herald, read the Times, read the Wall Street Journal, then turn on PBS, and all the different, get a sampling. And I think after that, each individual is going to have a better perspective of who to vote for.
Thank you. Now we're going to go to the next clip. Thank you, Paul.
Let's spend a good deal of time on the battle over judicial nominations, which the President will address this morning. Nominees who both sides admit are qualified are being held up because of their possible, not demonstrated, views on one issue, abortion. This should be a trademark issue for FNC today and in the days to come.
There was nothing covert about the way the managing editors in New York or Washington operated. They made it perfectly clear what they expected from us.
The so-called 9/11 Commission has already been meeting. This is not what did he know and when did he know it stuff. Do not turn this into Watergate.
Every morning there was a detailed list of subjects to talk about, not talk about.
Kerry's speech on the economy at Georgetown is likely to move onto the topic of Iraq. We should take the beginning of the Kerry speech and see if other news at the time is more compelling. It is not required to take it start to finish.
They were just actually issuing edicts to the reporters to control what they could say and how they could say it.
Let's refer to the U.S. Marines we see in the foreground as sharpshooters, not snipers, which carries a negative connotation.
When headquarters sent a memo every morning and said, we want to touch on the following issues, we want to cover the following stories, we want to do them in this particular way, our job and our objective then was to execute the plan.
The pictures from Abu Ghraib prison are disturbing. Today we have a picture, aired on Al Arabiya, of an American hostage being held with a scarf over his eyes, clearly against his will. Who's outraged on his behalf?
I've never heard of any other network nor any other legitimate news organization doing that, newspaper or broadcast.
Peter, what do you feel about newsmen being given directives of that kind by their most senior management?
Well, I've never been in the newspaper business, but I would guess that some form of that takes place in every newspaper and television and radio situation, that the manager of the station or the paper certainly makes his or her views known. And there is also, I think, clearly a sense of who pays the check, who owns the station and what their orientation might be. I'd like to come back, if I might, to a point that was made towards the end of our previous comment, and that is whether or not the partisanship that is alleged in Outfoxed is a danger to democracy. And I think the answer is yes, but, and the but is that I don't think it's uniquely the case for Fox. I think that increased partisanship, which is evident, I think, in several respects, and not just on the part of Fox, is bad for democracy. And more so, I think the blurring of entertainment and news, so-called infotainment, is also a danger. And Fox simply is way out ahead of everybody else, not to their credit, but way out ahead of everybody else in both of those areas. So I'm not alarmed to see that there's a daily memo within Fox that says this is what you should talk about today, and don't call sharpshooters, don't call snipers, call them sharpshooters. I assume something like that goes on, maybe not to the same degree. This is not to say that I think Fox is great. I don't. I think they are the worst of the worst, but nonetheless not alone.
If I can just make a quick point to that, Pat Purcell doesn't tell me what to do, but I do have bosses who, whenever a big story comes along, want to make sure that in our unit the story gets covered. The church closing announcements, we got an email. Hey, the church closing announcements are going to be at 10 o'clock on Monday. Have you talked to your parishioners? Have you met with the local priest? Do you have sources yet? What are you going to do for a story? What are you going to do for a follow-up story? So those types of things happen in every news organization from your immediate editor. In the case of Moody, he's the immediate editor of the network, as is Roger Ailes, who was a Republican political operative. And you could make the case that maybe Roger Ailes doesn't allow certain things to be on the network that he doesn't like, and you can make that argument. But this happens in every news organization. Your immediate boss, whatever the story of the day, or in my case, the story of the week or story of the month that's going on in the community in our unit, a memo goes out from the editor saying, what are you doing? Please let me know, and share certain angles on stories. So that happens.
Right. So I would contend the difference is subtle but important. It's one thing for your editor to say, the church is closing, I want to make sure you get a story. It's another thing for your editor to say, the church is closing, I want you to make sure you got a story. I have an anti-Catholic bias. He doesn't say that, but that's what he says. So I want you to make sure the only parishioners that you interview are the ones who are upset, who thinks things are wrong, and make sure you don't report anything that would look sympathetic to the Catholic Church. That's a very important distinction.
I want to throw a question to all of you. Why is it that certain basic facts, the connection between Saddam Hussein and Al-Qaeda, the presence or lack of presence of weapons of mass destruction, why is it, as you point out, why does it go well beyond the bounds of just the Fox audience that so many people don't have the basic facts right?
I mean, news organizations are doing a horrible job of informing people.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's across the board. I spend hours, my family will attest to this, hours monitoring the news every day. Now, I make it a point. I'm very concerned about media consolidation. I'm very concerned about media reform and media bias. And I have to tell you that you have to spend about 5 or 6 hours a day to get to the facts. There's, it's easy and inexpensive to put on screaming talking heads on both sides of an issue and have it be a he said, she said debate where the anchor or the reporter just kind of sits in the middle and kind of moderates it, but doesn't really challenge or inform, clarify, and have any research of their own to really put forth what the facts are. And I believe that in a situation like Fox, it would be interesting to see what the costs outside of paying the talent, what the costs are to producing that newscast. because it doesn't seem like that there's a whole lot of research that's going on to really get to the facts. It tends to be very bombastic and sensationalistic and
vapid.
opinionated.
I mean, it's vapid. There's just nothing and no content to it. And I think that there's a feeling abound in certain, it's not in Massachusetts, certainly in the United States, that we want more direct information of facts. And I think that's going to rebound sooner or later. People are going to say, yeah, what about where's the meat? Let's get right down to it. Interesting comment by Tony, though, because in some ways, Tony, you've presented that you're not affected by the heads down. But I know a couple instances where like it was when Finneran was coming to Boston, was coming to Winchester. You did not want to cover that. You thought that was sensationalism, and that he absolutely covered every single issue on the opposite side to where you
well,
might
that's
stand.
not true. I didn't. It wasn't that. Wait. Hold
no,
on,
no,
Paul.
but
That's factually. Hold on. That's factually incorrect.
See, now we're getting the handwriting and stuff.
No, that's factually incorrect.
But let's just say you gave the impression to me that you did not want to cover that. Now, whether you're conservative or liberal, it doesn't make a difference. The idea is that that's news coming to Winchester. But you did hear from higher up. You told me this. That higher up, that covered. It's got to be covered.
No, what happened was that I refused to make a commitment to cover it a month in advance. That's what happened. And I was asked why we weren't covering it, and I said, it's not that we're not covering it. We don't make a commitment for any story 3 to 4 weeks in advance. And that was how the situation went. And then what the conversation from there went to, it's a propaganda event for Finneran. And I do have to question the news value of it. And it was told to me that it was a news story and we should cover it. But I never made the commitment not to cover it. What I didn't do was I didn't make the commitment to cover it. And we don't do that for anybody 4 weeks in advance.
Let's try to take it back to the broader question, because we could enjoy a heated discussion about the local scene. But part of the answer to your question, David, and part of, I think, the answer to Kim's frustration of having to spend 3, 4, 5 hours a day to get the whole picture, is that I think all of the news media have been, unfortunately, fairly successfully intimidated by the power of Washington, by the power of whoever is in charge. I don't think this is a uniquely Republican versus Democrat situation. So you have even, the holiest of the holy, the Washington Post and the New York Times have both issued mea culpas about their coverage of the run-up to the Iraq War. So we're not even from the best, supposedly most responsible journalistic sources getting the information that we need, and so you have to go everywhere to try to get the whole story. So I'm not surprised that people whose sole diet or primary diet of input is Fox News would be that far away from what is clearly the truth in the answers to those questions.
I think it's an interesting point you make. Patriotism is being used as a tool to suppress real debate and real news. And the morning of the taping of this show, it was a very interesting article, actually the lead editorial in the Financial Times of London, which has a headline that is "Time to Consider Iraq Withdrawal." This is our major ally in this war, who's a conservative, their Wall Street Journal is asking that question. I don't even believe the New York Times would dare print that because of the outrage that we're producing in this country right now. And that's a problem. You can't have real debate when people are being bashed over the head for being unpatriotic if they question any of the assumptions of the regime or the government, or whatever you like to call it.
But hasn't that formulated somewhat of John Kerry's responses? I mean, in some ways, because
it's
he's
muscled
so
his
afraid
response, yes.
of being considered a non-patriot that he has rubber-stamped everything that George Bush...
Yeah.
I see that as a problem for him, personally.
Yeah, I think it's a problem for Kerry. I think it's a problem for democracy in this country.
He doesn't want to be labeled
It is.
unpatriotic.
It's a serious problem.
But I'd like to if I could, to Kim and Peter's point. If you want every last detail and every last thing, yes, you have to peruse very deep and very hard. But I do think there are many, many, many good sources readily available. The Winchester Star does a good job, I think. I think the Globe does a great job. I think the Herald, does a decent job. If you can get a good, fairly balanced, objective, decent journalistic report from a lot of print media. So I think obviously, if you want to be very informed, you have to do a lot of research, right? That's like being the reporter yourself.
I guess that's a problem too.
But
many people have got that in
right,
their time.
you can, but I think you can get a good look. What I think the problem is, and this gets to Peter's point, where you were talking about the mea culpas of the LA Times and the New York Times and all that. I think the problem is the distortion that is so prevalent, particularly on talk radio, constantly. And Fox News, the Fox News network, to me appears to be very close to talk radio on TV. And the blur between, is it news or is it commentary? And so what I think happens is not that it's hard to get to the facts, it's that it's hard not to be fooled. And I don't think that it's equal on both sides. All of talk radio, except for Al Franken recently, all of talk radio is far right wing. And
But
Fox
Michael,
News
and
is
that,
far right
That
wing.
gets to my point about impressions. And you're right. If somebody, and let's just take something easy that everybody saw every day, Abu Ghraib, what's happening over in Iraq, about the torture that's occurring over there. Now, Globe did an interesting article on that. They said after 1 month, there were a couple articles saying, well, why can't you have a focus on some of the good stuff that might be occurring over there? Now this isn't the issue of whether we should be there or shouldn't be there, but heaven knows, every American, it looked like an American invasion that was sponsored with testosterone, and that was hurting every single individual over there. But yet, the Globe did research, and they said, you know, out of the 999 articles and pictures that we've put in about this, not one has been a pro what we're doing to benefit Iraq. And then they showed the next day a Marine helping out some kids, reading books, and delivering some food. And that impression, whether you believe it or not, comes off as just saying, oh boy, we're terrible. We are horrible.
Yes. Thank you. We have to go to a break. We'll come back. Thank you.
If you think there's a difference, you're dead wrong. Alcohol kills more people under 21 than heroin, cocaine, and every other illegal drug combined. MAD. Say nothing, do nothing, stop nothing.
I was checking you out, and I was thinking, how about you come out to my car, we can have a couple beers, fool around a little bit. You know, I could give you herpes.
Okay, yeah, that sounds great.
MAD. Face the brutal truth about underage drinking.
Let's go now to the next clip.
The real revolutionary breakthrough of Fox has been it's eliminated journalism. I mean, that's the thing to understand. What Fox News Channel has done is it's stripped out any notion of journalism as we've traditionally understood it from its product. There is no journalism at the Fox News Channel.
What? The person cut his mic.
Listen, Chad,
starter's
stop,
pistol. Let me finish.
Stop.
Chad,
I want to test if you're an honest individual.
All right.
Bodies
I'm sorry to cut you off. I know we're in some controversial stuff here, but my religion didn't teach me that. But thank you very much for being here. It's a right-wing network, and you don't want to hear this stuff.
You want to do.
It's not about the kid. It's about you, Jamie. Let's go. Okay. Thank you, Jamie. Let's
About me, I'm doing, yes.
Good night.
I'm doing,
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, sir.
Don't take your cheap little pathetic shot. I am telling you that that's what
You're
he voted
taking
against.
cheap little pathetic shots.
Just giving his
trying
record.
to tell you what the truth is. No, you're misrepresenting his record.
I'm telling the
That's
truth,
reality.
sir.
I've
That's the
looked at
truth
it.
about his record.
I understand what your position is not correct.
I'd like to hear one single...
you're on satellite radio, because you can't get on regular radio.
Paula Evans, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Bill, if you are so concerned about public figures being bad role models for children, please stop rudely interrupting your guests and telling them to shut up. Well, the shut up line has happened only once in 6 years, Miss Evans.
Well, you know, I think that asking a student to stay in the closet in order to go to school is a lot like asking an African-American student.
Want to know what I was doing?
Shut up.
Please don't tell me to shut up.
As respect
Why did you have to tell him you were an atheist if you didn't have any trouble reading the oath? Why didn't you just shut up? What Jimmy Carter should do is privately give Mr. Bush his opinion and shut up publicly. That would be best for the country. And it is our duty as loyal Americans to shut up once the fighting begins. Once the war against Saddam begins, we expect every American to support our military, and if they can't do that, to shut up. All he's got in 6.5 years is that I misspoke, that I labeled a polka war to Peabody. He writes it in his book. He tries to make me out to be a liar.
No,
Hey,
that's
shut up.
No,
you had your
shut up.
35 minutes. Shut.
Shut up, David.
Oh, you beat me to the punch, Tony. So what do you think of that? Is that journalism? I mean, they said this is
it's entertainment.
Free. Yeah, it's entertainment.
Here's the thing about I read Bill O'Reilly's first book, and it's amazing how populist he is in the book. And he talks about his working class background, and it's a nice read. It's homely, it's very easy. It's not very, it's not smart read. I mean, it's a nice little read. But
kind of gentler, Bill O'Reilly.
You'd be surprised. I mean, I'm telling you, if you read the book, you wouldn't know it was him. And then you watch the show, and I don't know, he's 6'7" or something, and they jack him up on crack or whatever. I don't know what makes him so wound up. But I think
you finally revealed the real truth.
It's bad to say. It's bad to say I don't tell people to shut up, and then have a bunch of clips where you're telling people to shut up. And it takes a lot of time to scour through 24 hours of programming to find 8 or 9 clips. But
the fact remains, he was journalistically incorrect.
Oh yeah, no, he was defending himself in a situation where he was being berated by someone who was his opponent. But and people tend to do that sometimes. I do think, and maybe it'll lead to the next clip, what he did to the kid whose father died in September 11th attacks was just reprehensible in my opinion. I can't really defend it.
But can you envision like Mike Wallace or Walter Cronkite, any real journalist, doing that? I mean, that's the insanity of today's journalism or attack journalism.
Well, don't generalize it as all journalism today, though. There's plenty of good journalism still left. The problem is this type of stuff, which is not journalists. I call this is WWF, posing as news, right? And that is also the market segment that they're appealing to, right? It's these, we said 14 to 40-year-old males, right? And hey, guess what? They're the bad guys. We're the good guys. It's obvious. We yell at them. We tell them they're stupid because we're smart. And it appeals to them just as Hulk Hogan appeals to them. Just as Arnold Schwarzenegger appeals to them in a certain degree. I mean, Arnold was a WWF type action hero, right? And that's I believe that this is orchestrated, this is planned, they're told to be tough, yell at them, call your guest names. Look, it's the WWF good guy, bad guy.
But Bill O'Reilly, I think, actually has a very fiery temper. I actually think he loses control quite a bit. And I have to say that I've watched The Factor on several occasions. My father is a big fan. So I know this very well because my father and I have had many, many heated discussions about the Fox News Channel. What I find most problematic about Bill O'Reilly's show, and Bill O'Reilly in general, specifically, compared to, say, a Sean Hannity, is that Bill O'Reilly likes to frame himself as being independent and neutral on these issues, and that he's the traditionalist. He's not partisan. And at least Sean Hannity comes out and says, I'm a right-wing conservative, Republican. Right. And he comes out swinging for that side, and that's okay, because people know what they're getting with Sean Hannity. With Bill O'Reilly, to me, it's very deceiving, because people think, especially the independents, and we know this year that those independent voters are very important voters. They think when they watch The Factor that they're getting an independent, objective perspective, and they're getting anything but that. That's what I think is problematic.
His tag, the no spin zone. Right? That's the way he opens the show. Right. That's what you're entering the no
And he
zone.
spins everything.
That's the beauty of it.
See,
I admire that.
The entire network is Orwellian in terms of their marketing.
Well, I would get
fair and balanced.
I hate to be, I'm probably the most liberal person here, and I hate to be defending this, but his share this week is 2, which means there's about 1.1 million people watching his show.
That's a
to
lot
say
of people.
that, yeah, but you're talking about 200 million voters. Less than 1% of the population is watching this program. They're not going to be influenced by the no spin zone spinning the no spin zone.
Well,
I mean, I don't.
None of them are in the swing states.
No, 100 million people voted in the last.
It's accumulated degradation, though.
100 million people voted in the last election. 100 million people didn't. There's 200 and whatever million adults living in the country, and 1% of them on any given night are watching Bill O'Reilly.
No, actually,
less than 1%.
Only
And
19 million didn't vote. Remember that. That's
well,
but
it's more than that.
Clearly,
We count the people who weren't registered. I mean,
it clearly is working though, and Fox now has outpaced CNN, their rival. I mean, Murdoch started it up because of his arguments with Ted Turner in the first place. But to come back to a point that Michael made in terms of, it seems to me that you feel that the journalism. Good journalism still exists almost everywhere except Fox. Okay, well, I don't want to misrepresent your view, but
there's still plenty out there.
But I don't see this as equal. Going back to an earlier comment you made, I don't see the Democrat Party being equally culpable in this as the Republicans. It's not that, but I think both sides engage in this. Both media camps engage in this. But if you don't think that the success of Fox has been degrading to journalism, just think about what happened to the 2 TV stations in Boston, channels 4 and 5, or all 3 of them, I should say, once Fox came in. First 7 went to the, all tabloid.
Well, be careful there. 7 was always tabloid.
Well, all right.
I mean,
they got worse. They got worse.
You were best saying with 4 and 5.
Well, they got worse, and the infection spread. And so
it totally does.
And this is what I think is the danger. To go back to an earlier point, to the danger to the democracy is now about partisanship. If I may just pursue that for a moment, I could conceive, given what I take to be what Murdoch is all about and what News Corp, the holding company, is all about. I could imagine that if we had a tsunami in the coming election, and I could pray for this, that not only did we have a Democrat in the White House, but that both houses of Congress went Democratic, that you would see a shift. It would be gradual, but you would see a shift in Fox's orientation, because they're going to go where the power is. They're going to go where the people who can do good things for them are, and who can affect their power is. So 20 years down the road, if we have an all-Democrat control of the country, I could see Fox News being accused of being partisan to the hilt on the left.
Oh, I don't know if that would
That's hard to wrap your mind around that.
I'm sure Bill Clinton would agree with that right now.
I think that they will be ruthless with Kerry. They will be ruthless with every vote in Congress. Well, I think that they will have a take no prisoners approach, and suddenly they won't just be showing happy, smiling pictures of John Kerry in every photo op, and they'll be making news.
It depends. Are the Democrats going to threaten Murdoch with anything he purchased? Are they going to re-regulate the telecom industry?
No.
It was the Democrats who got that bill passed. It was Clinton's bill. I mean, if the Democrats come back into power and then go to Murdoch and say, well, you're not going to get EchoStar unless you start covering us better, I would agree with you. But if it's going to be Democrats like the previous administration of 8 years of kowtowing to big business and corporate media consolidation, then no, you won't see that, because they don't have to. Either way, they still get to consolidate everything. So.
But following that, I mean, you're speaking in negation, though, of what really actually occurred. Who's been the toughest critic of Clinton when Clinton was in office? Fox 25. Right. I mean, Fox News.
Fox News, sure.
And so Clinton was, quote unquote, in power.
Right.
And so I don't buy that. I think
Clinton,
there is a
Clinton here's the thing, though. They didn't have to kowtow to Clinton because Clinton gave them their networks. He gave them their TV stations. If Clinton had said, you know what,
eviscerate you?
If Clinton said, or you could say it with Markey or Kerry or any of these people. If they say tomorrow, you know what, if I get elected, we're going to rescind the 1996 Telecom Act. You watch how much they change, but you won't see that. Because even Markey, oh yeah, no, I shouldn't have voted for that, but I still support it. I mean, you know, it's not going to change anything.
And it's interesting because when Howard Dean was interviewed on Hardball with Chris Matthews, when he came out and said that he would work to eliminate media consolidation, it seemed like very soon after he said that, he got really raked over the coals by the press.
Yep.
And I don't mean to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but it certainly seemed like they were after him in a big way. And it's okay for Zell Miller to come out like, you know, his head spinning off his shoulders at the RNC, and little was made about it. But Howard Dean has a moment after the Iowa caucuses, and we heard about it as if we had just had a nuclear event in this country. That to me was a very good example of where the media is going. And it may start off with a small percentage of people in the country listening, you know, and watching Fox, but I think that's misleading because it becomes the echo chamber, which then reverberates to talk radio, and then it gets some play in the print, and then it's the word of mouth, and then it becomes truth and real, and people start repeating it and start believing it.
Zell Miller as the baby, as the girl in The Exorcist. That's a great example. and yet he did not get eviscerated as a Dean would, even though Dean gave practically the same speech.
Well, he did on Chris
prior to
Matthews,
that.
but I mean, you know.
Well, I think that I'd like to see still that, Peter, even if that did happen, even if Fox changed and started, you know, the point is, as citizens who believe in preserving a democracy, if it's not too late already, it would be our duty to be just as upset about
Absolutely.
it. Right, of course.
You know,
Nobody should get a pass.
It is
That's
a,
more the
partisanship is a danger. There's no question. From either
Partisanship is
side.
okay. Partisanship is okay. It's the distortions that are a danger.
Thank you. We need to go to the next clip, and we'll continue on with this discussion after that. Thank you.
The techniques of odd polling and odd graphics of Democrats and weird banners in the lower third of your screen. These are all pretty sophisticated techniques, and they work in collaboration with the most genius marketing slogan in history, which is fair and balanced.
So if you're the graphics department and you can put up a liberal flip-flopper as the chyron, hey, that's great, because the next time the graphics department has a discussion with management can say, yeah, you guys have been doing a great job.
Graphics are always moving in the background. They've sort of pioneered the use of the American flag as an icon of your news broadcast.
So there's a lot of stuff that people come up with on their own, which in other news organizations, you'd never think of coming up with some of the stuff, much less even putting it on the air. But at Fox News, there's sort of you're rewarded for pushing the envelope. And if you're pushing the envelope against a Democrat and in support of a Republican, that's great. The problem comes if you try to push the envelope, or God forbid, should put in some sort of similar sort of style or approach to Republican, then you get yourself in trouble.
Is going to divert resources and attention that should be focused on Al-Qaeda. And Sean Hannity, being the right-wing cheerleader that he is, was just incensed that I had the temerity to suggest that we couldn't.
We do have the ability and the resources we're able to walk and chew gum. We can handle the situation in Iraq, and we can still finish the job of protecting against Al-Qaeda and another attack.
What happens is when the resources end up getting diverted, and particularly the airlift assets required. Facts don't seem to have any effect upon him. What was unusual is it was after that appearance that, even though I was under contract to Fox for another 8 weeks roughly, they stopped using me.
Your government failed you. Those entrusted with protecting you failed you. And I failed you. And for that failure, I would ask, once all the facts are out, for your understanding and for your forgiveness.
When Richard Clark emerged, it was obvious this was a danger to the administration because he had worked at the highest echelons of the Bush administration. And it was almost like Fox News was working off of the playbook coming out of the White House.
that he had to be torn down. He had to be turned into a Democrat, a liberal, a Kerry guy.
He is bringing this up in the heat of a presidential campaign.
Can you assume from what he's saying that he has now become a political operative?
Do you feel that there is a political... He is, as some have suggested, auditioning for a job in the Kerry administration.
He's sucking up to another administration.
He said when he came to me to ask for my support with Tom Ridge.
He'd been angling for a top job in Homeland Security Department and did not get it.
See, one of the things that Fox does and conservatives do is they don't have to win every argument, but if they can muddy the argument enough, if they can turn it into a draw, that to them is a victory, because it denies the other side a victory.
Well, Sean, there are apparently two Dick Clarks here.
Dick Clark has been on three sides of a two-sided issue. He's totally contradicted himself.
His statements are contradictory.
There's a lot of information that contradicts Clark.
And aren't there insufficient contradictions?
He has written a book, and he certainly wants to go out there and promote that book.
Or is he just out to sell a book? Who's out to sell his book?
Did he have a motive behind writing the book and going out on 60 Minutes and criticizing the Bush administration? Obviously, this guy's hawking a book.
Unveiling his book.
An appalling act of profiteering. This guy rakes Bush over the coals and gives Clinton a pass.
And the book gives Clinton a complete pass.
Easily, Clark treats the Bill Clinton era.
There are some real concerns about where the truth lies and what Richard Clark was saying.
They launched a major smear campaign. In some ways, it worked.
I thought, number one, he was extremely melodramatic and that he was intoning with great pathos. I mean, it almost seemed like it was a performance.
And it was just attack politics on a TV channel. Usually you leave attack politics to a political campaign.
Karl Rove and company are quite good at character assassination. You know, there are all these people, dozens of people in the White House, paid for by you and I, paid for by our taxes, right? Writing talking points, calling up conservative columnists, calling up talk radio hosts, telling them what to say. It's interesting. All the talk radio people, the right-wing talk radio people all across the country, saying exactly the same thing, exactly same words.
I noticed that. I was watching it. There's a 24-hour news network, and I'm sure it's a coincidence, but what they were saying was remarkably similar to what the White House was saying, and I couldn't help but thinking how funny that was.
We are bringing diversity of opinion. There is diversity of opinion on Fox News. You may disagree with that. We have many liberals there.
Paul, I guess this is a very topical clip. Smearing people who have made accusations seems to be a pattern in this election. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, not just from the Winchester Star. I mean, they're talking national.
Oh, God.
But
I missed that.
What I find
careful,
out
Paul.
about this, they own the ink. But what I find is fascinating about this is you're seeing this, and you're saying topical. You're seeing this on a day in, day out basis. What's happening with John Kerry? I mean, here, regardless of whether it was one Bronze Star that should not have been Bronze Star, or a Purple Heart, or Congressional Medal of Honor, he is being politically and publicly eviscerated and lynched. Because what? Because, quote unquote, he supposedly lied, or there's a vagary, there's ambiguity. You can't take the fact that he was at least hurt in one instance, and that he went to war, he went to Vietnam. And that's the spin of what's occurring, at least on the national scale right now, because by Kerry, at least on the campaign trail, by him just focusing on that one issue, they've just done what that clip said. They've muddied it. I mean, they haven't taken away his victory, they haven't taken away his medals, but they've muddied him. So he can't brag and have that muscle-pumping testosterone that the Republicans had in their campaign. Now, I know that the Globe came out and said, well, Bush only attended some of his National Guard, or he wasn't, and you see the Globe trying to respond on behalf of Bush. But that brings the weary eye of an objective analyst to say, hey, geez, what's the Globe trying to do? The Globe's trying to strike back. Did you see that a couple days ago with Bush?
Yeah.
And it's topical. That's what's happening. Yes, did the Swift boat ads damage Kerry? And nothing to do with Karl Rove, of course, even though two members of the same Republican committee that worked with Karl have resigned. But that's done incredible damage to him. And I don't know if he's going to be able to spin out of it either.
Right. If I could, I think an interesting part of that is how they make their own news. Right, and I watched it, as I was saying earlier to some of you. I watched Fox News tonight, just before I came down, and they have a show from 5 to 6 p.m. and it's called The Big Story. And it's presented as if it's a news broadcast, and it's, you know, it's this news slot time as well. So the opening story lasted 25 minutes. It went from 5 to 5:25, and there were 2 commercial breaks during it. And the opening story was, just as you said, Fox News investigators have turned up evidence that possibly the papers given to CBS about Bush's record earlier this week may be forgeries. So that's the big story. And the first 3 minutes was the reporter who worked on the investigation. The next 3 minutes was the son of the author saying that his dad wouldn't have written such letters. And he was clearly a Bush supporter. Then they went to commercial, and I saw for the first time the Swift boat ad against Kerry.
Right.
In Massachusetts, I've never seen it until then.
Fascinating.
They came back from the commercial.
It's coincidental, Mike.
They came back from the commercial and went to the third person that they were going to interview. And it was a Republican representative, I didn't catch from which state. And they interviewed him for 3 minutes. So they had 3 people they've interviewed, each for 3 minutes. They go to another commercial break, and it's the Swift boat ad again. I've never seen it, and now I've seen it twice. And this is, now we're about 20 minutes into the story.
So you're interpreting this as almost financing?
It's a deflection of the,
of
the rebut.
It's First of all, they're making their own news. This is a 23-minute story on news they broke today because they think these things are forgeries. The first 3 guests that they talked to are all totally supportive of them. I wrote down the questions. They're unbelievable, the softball questions.
Oh, they're all leading.
Finally, they go to somebody who's on the other opinion after 20 minutes, after 2 Swift boat commercials. So they go to this other guy. He's a former South Carolina Democratic Party chairman. And they talk to him for 2 minutes. And I kept track of interruptions.
Yeah.
There was 0 interruptions of the first 3 interviewers. This guy was interrupted 3 times during his 2 minutes. And while he was making an answer, they had technical difficulties. And you couldn't see or hear it. Plus, he was on the phone.
And there was no
Everyone else
expert,
was in person.
No independent expert on either side? Or was there?
No, there wasn't. And it was interesting, too, because after those 22 minutes of three people, 2 commercials, he says, and because at Fox, we're fair and balanced, I now have a Democrat on the phone. And they give him 2 minutes, interrupt him 3 times.
It's like they found a bag lady out on the street.
Have technical difficulties.
Right.
Now, maybe the technical difficulties were real.
I found a Democrat. I love it.
Well, this was part of the suit.
And that's just tonight. I don't have to go back 3 years.
I mean,
to find this.
a big reason that Move On and others were, I think, motivated to file this suit, even though they knew that they weren't going to be successful in the pursuit of it, was because there is such a sense of outrage that Fox uses the slogan, fair and balanced. Even Tucker Carlson has said, we do it to drive the liberals crazy. You know, clearly it's anything but. But it's done, and you actually sat down and took notes.
I took
most
notes.
people don't do that. And for most people, that's very subtle, and they don't really get it. And I know that, Tony, we differ on this, but I do believe that the people that they bring on to interview to demonstrate the liberal or even moderate point of view are usually not the most well-known, well-spoken, articulate people. I've
Geraldine
often sat
Ferraro, Donna Brazil.
Tony, use this example. It was fresh meat to kill in the example that Mike
Jesse
used.
Jackson Jr. I mean,
but Tony, in this particular example,
I'm not gonna speak to this specific
he's the
example
only guy
because
on the phone.
I didn't see it. But
right, he's the only one who's on the phone. And they have technical difficulties during his answer. He's the only guy interrupted, and he's interrupted 3 times. And he had a total, with the interruptions and the technical difficulties, 2 minutes. The other guys had 3 minutes each.
But Mike, look at the bigger picture.
Where's the fair and
I can't
balanced
speak.
reporting?
If I can just cut in for a second, I can't speak for the clip, but I'll say this: Richard Clark's an American hero. What they did from those clips was wrong. He did sell a book, and he sold a lot of books, and we won't really know what happened on 9/11. So whether Fox News, attacks him, or whether you watch a documentary that's conveniently edited to look like they attacked him over a period of days, which they did. But I mean, it's
Well, the whole Republican machine attacked him And I'm glad you brought it back to that topic, because nothing was more central in that in the period where Bush's ratings started to deteriorate, to that deterioration than the first clear outing from inside the administration. Paul O'Neill's was sort of blown off within a day because Paul O'Neill retracted and ran away. But this guy stood up day after day after day being pounded.
Took a bludgeoning,
and he didn't waver in his view that essentially the administration was asleep for the first 9 months of the year, and that's a disgrace.
But look at the bigger picture on this. That's what my
But the Clinton administration was also asleep during the same time period.
It's Machiavelli genius.
They were not in office
before it gets traction.
During the sorry, go ahead.
No, I apologize. I'm just saying it's Machiavelli. It's clever and it's slick. Before the Globe article gets traction with the New York Times, what are they doing? They're blowing it apart and they're attacking the premise like any good argumenter.
Right.
They're going after the premise and they're saying, hey, and they're already mudding it. That validates exactly the strategy that we just saw in the Clinton.
Well, and that's why I think as citizens we need to express outrage, and hopefully somehow there'd be enough people who do, because they play it off as if it's a news channel, and that this is the news segment from 5 to 6. It's the news segment, and they're reporting breaking news, and it's not. It's totally. You know, they have two slogans. One of their other slogans is "We report, you decide," right? And it should be "We distort, you comply."
Right.
Right. I mean, that's what they're looking for, and it's so
Just
obvious.
to get it back to the topic, I mean, and you know, the Bush administration was caught asleep. You know, Clinton didn't do anything for 8 years about terrorism. What did he do? He passed an anti-terrorism bill in 1996 that basically did some of this. Was the precursor to the Patriot Act. It was a mini Patriot Act. It wasn't against foreigners living in the country legally. It was against American citizens.
Didn't he bomb Bin Laden's camps?
He sent up some cruise missiles to get the scandal. And here's the other. Wait a minute. Hold on.
I won't say shut up.
In 1999, Bill Cohen and Madeleine Albright and Sandy Berger went on a speaking tour that CNN covered a couple of events, and their big thing was, we need regime change in Iraq. I was against it then. I was against it when Bush did it. But the fact remains that Clinton didn't do anything about terrorism, and he also promoted the same thing that Bush did in reaction to terrorism.
It's not our topic.
No, but you're saying.
It's not.
The topic was that Bush was asleep at the wheel.
No, that's not our topic either.
No, she just said Bush was asleep at the wheel, and they
I
muddied
didn't say
Clark thing.
He's still sleeping.
I think he's asleep at the wheel, but I didn't just say that.
He was during the terrorist attacks, and so was the previous administration. See, that's the larger point of this, is that you can, for everything they say about the network, you can make the same case that they're not saying the same thing about the other side.
Well, I did not see the program that Michael spoke about, but I believe what he says. He was very careful about taking down the time and so forth. And so the question is, you're a reasonable person, and let's not say objective any more than I am, but was it fair and balanced? It didn't sound to me as though it was. Okay, so where do they get off calling it fair and balanced? And I'd like to go to the FCC issue on this, because even under a Republican administration, especially under a Republican administration with Powell at the helm at the FCC, this isn't likely to get, a complaint against the fair and balanced thing isn't likely to get very far.
Cable networks aren't regulated by the FCC. I mean, that's the larger point.
This brings it home. You'd understand this brings it home. It would be almost like writing a slash and burn article, and then a person sending a letter to the editor, and the person just complaining about that, and the letter to the editor, and then the editor goes, oh, well, this person, and then denying or rebutting that person's response and the letter to the editor. It's not balanced. If a person has a complaint about that article, let them say it without now criticizing that person.
Let's just hold that thought. We're going to go to the next clip and
There's another one.
move along. Thank you.
We looked at Special Report's one-on-one interviews. They're once a day. We studied 25 weeks of the one-on-one guest who appeared on Special Report from late June through mid-December of 2003. Republicans appeared 5 times as often as Democrats on one-on-one newsmaker interviews. That means that Republicans made up 83% of the partisan guests, while Democrats made up just 17%. In addition, The few Democrats that were interviewed for the show tended to be centrist and conservative Democrats, often brought on to affirm Bush administration policies. So what does this all mean? Well, if Fox were the bastion of fairness and balance that it claims to be, we'd see a lot more balance in this prominent interview segment on the network's most prestigious show. Instead, the numbers indicate that Brit Hume and Special Report choose their guest based on political considerations rather than news judgment.
That's here on the Fox News Channel, the network America trusts for fair and balanced news.
My criticism of Fox News isn't that it's a conservative channel. It's the consumer fraud of fair and balanced. It's nothing of the sort.
You pitch a story in any given editorial meeting that didn't meet the criteria that they had explained to you, and you got a thumbs down.
When you have this executive vice president and those around him who are consistently saying, no, we're not going to do that story. No, this story's bad, this story's good. And it becomes very clear to all the bureau chiefs, to everybody involved who have been there over a period of years, there are certain kinds of stories it's not even worth bringing up. There are other kinds of stories that you know management's going to love.
Fox News Channel's stated practice was to embarrass, humiliate, challenge, or disrupt whatever Jesse Jackson did. We were told on many occasions that he was one of our targets. Anything we could do or say that would embarrass him, discredit him, we were encouraged to find the information, and we were encouraged to report the information.
Listen, we're making good progress in Iraq. Sometimes it's hard to tell it when you listen to the filter.
Tremendous progress in Iraq. All the kids are back at school, 10% more than when Saddam Hussein was there. There's 100% more fresh water.
It's a fresh start for Iraqi athletes.
So far, 2,500 schools have been renovated.
Are Iraqis better off than they were 1 year ago?
Yes, they are definitely better off.
As these brave athletes look forward to making Olympic gold.
I mean, there's so many positive developments.
Fox has made a decision to present the Iraq War as a success and as an ongoing success.
The Baghdad Equestrian Club is open for business. And yes, you can play these ponies.
It's the Iraq you don't hear about. Falling unemployment, rising wages, interest rates down, foreign investment up.
Life for 95% of the Iraqis is already immeasurably better than it was under the decades of Saddam's rule. There's no question about that, and that's what's the least reported story over there. You go to the markets, they're thriving. Big fat fish coming out of the Tigris and the Euphrates River.
Young men in Baghdad blowing off steam with their cars. The guys gather to put their wheels through the paces once a week, something they say they were not allowed to do under the old regime.
The senior producer told the 2 or 3 writers for her news hour, she told us, now just keep in mind it's all good. This is such a fair and balanced issue. Keep it positive. We've got to emphasize all the good that we're doing. She at that point made a reference to rebuilding schools, bringing democracy to Iraq, and then she said, see, big progress. Yoo-hoo for us. Things were actually at that point going quite badly. Many more American soldiers were dying each day, and God knows how many Iraqis.
277 U.S. soldiers have now died in Iraq, which means that statistically speaking, U.S. soldiers have less of a chance of dying from all causes in Iraq than citizens have of being murdered in California, which is roughly the same geographical size.
Michael, I shared with you earlier in the program a little bit of the Financial Times happens to have come out today with a comment that even goes as far as to consider should we be withdrawing from Iraq, and yet Fox would I'm sure be continuing to sell the story that there's been an incredible success, admittedly along with the administration. How do we have an election and a real dialogue in this community when people have such extraordinarily different views of what ought to be at least similar objective facts?
Well, I don't think that gets in the way of having the election. I think it's we still have the election. We still hope that the candidate that we support is able to cut through the distortion and get at least what they believe to be their viewpoint and their position out, and so forth. So, you know, if Fox wants to present a rosy picture in Iraq, I think that that's perfectly fine, if they make it clear that you know, this is an editorial comment, you know, versus reporting something as news and so forth. I think, though, that you picked a great clip to end on, because it hits the nail on the head. It's that is all about fair and balanced. Is Fox News fair and balanced? And as I wrote earlier, from my experience just before coming to the show, I thought not even close. From any time that I've ever viewed it, I felt not even close. And I was mentioning to Tony while we were watching the clip that I'm not sure our panel is balanced.
No,
but
it wasn't chosen in that way.
we admit it, and we would
Yeah,
not
front.
pretend
But
that
to be,
it isn't.
to be fair
right?
and balanced in this one instance, this is why I brought up at the beginning of the show. If you were to look at all the Globe and all the other types of news outlets, everything was negative, I mean, up to the Fox picnic party over in Iraq. But up to that, everything was or has been negative in Iraq, without even looking at the good side. So I'm kind of in agreement with Fox in this instance, saying that, hey, there should be some balance, as to say, it's not all death, murder, and mayhem. It's close to, but there are some bright spots.
Okay, so that's one particular issue, right? But in general, I think if we think of this show as if possible, with this imbalanced panel, to make an objective opinion on whether Fox News Network is fair and balanced, I think you would be extremely hard-pressed to say that they are. And what concerns me the most is the repetitive drumbeat that they put out. At least every 5 minutes, you'll hear them say, fair and balanced, fair and balanced, fair and balanced. So you tend to believe it after a while.
And it's beyond subliminal,
right?
too. I mean,
and if you challenged them, they would tell you they're fair and balanced, I believe. Right?
Well,
Whereas at least here, I'm willing to say this panel may be imbalanced. Right.
But the problem with that is I don't think most people would object to Fox News existing in its current format if it was considered a Republican news network.
Right.
And just let it come out and say, you know, we cover this from a partisan lens.
Right.
And I think that would be fine.
So it's relying on a naive, to a certain degree, a naive audience, an audience that is particularly younger demographic that possibly doesn't know how to filter facts.
Actually, I think they have a lot of older viewers. I'm not familiar with their demographics, but my guess, just anecdotally, would be that a lot of their viewers are older people who consider themselves very patriotic. And they consider that this network is a very patriotic, kind of traditional, skewing a little conservative. My feeling is that I don't want to know how my news anchor votes. I don't think that should be apparent. When I watch Lou Dobbs on CNN, and I frankly think that Lou Dobbs does one of the best jobs in television on his 1-hour broadcast, I'm never sure of how Lou Dobbs votes. The same with somebody like Ted Koppel, and I don't think I should know that. I think that the issues should be presented in a knowledgeable, objective way where the anchor also plays the role of investigator, getting to the facts, challenging people, and getting the information out. And bringing on knowledgeable people on both sides of an issue and giving them a level playing field in which to make their point. That never happens on Fox News. And unfortunately, people get sucked into it. They think they're getting the full story. They think they're getting both sides. They think that they are knowledgeable on all the issues. My father knew nothing about the issue with touchscreen voting. They don't cover many of these issues on Fox News. They get no coverage at all.
Well,
So
Fox News did do a piece on the DRE machines. But to get back to the clip, I would agree with Paul. I think it's important to show positive changes that have happened in Iraq. And being someone who watches cable news a lot, there's a lot of blood and mayhem. I mean, Fox News is really good about getting the guys with the infrared cameras with the damn, things over here, and oh, look, we just blew up that truck that was a truck bomb. I mean, they get and they've shown guys, getting fired at and stuff. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with how they're portrayed in this, again, with selective editing showing the Olympic team in the schools and stuff, but we need to see that part of it, because all we have seen, and I'm glad a lot of what we've seen is the blood and the gore, but we haven't seen any of the positive things. I would just add, and this is a failure of all the media in general that's been dealt with this issue, except for maybe Frontline, nobody has addressed the fact that we're responsible for what's going on there. We sold him these weapons. It was Democrats in Congress and Republican administration in the presidency that sold him all those toys, and it was Bush Sr., Clinton's continuation of sanctions that have brought killed over 1.5 million women and children in that country, and none of them, the Globe, the Herald, the Times, MSNBC, whatever, none of them ever discussed that.
But
and that is where, and that comes back to the point: why did we have to go there? Why did we have to go there? Why is the situation the way it is there? We caused that. And it's good to see positive things on 5% of the broadcast about Olympic teams and schools being reconstructed.
But I do like Kim's point, and getting back to that and perhaps we can legislate it. Put a warning label on Fox News. Just saying, that warning, Surgeon General, this could be bad. This Republican agitprop could be bad for your mental and physical health. Every single show.
I didn't exactly make that.
You wouldn't have to do that.
They do cigarettes, they do food. Why not Fox
possibly
News?
your intellectual.
You just need to say this is not news. This is not news, and it's not fair and balanced. That would satisfy me.
Right. Or we
just at the beginning of the show and at the end. At the right up.
Well, on the fair and balanced point, just a small anecdote. Right after I saw the film for the first time, I was speaking to a dear friend, a young woman who I thought I knew her leanings to the right slightly, but I told her about this, and I said, "Would you like to watch this?" I said, "It's about Fox News." And she said, "Oh, I love Fox News. I watch it all the time." Well, I was a little bit surprised, but I said, "Well then, that's good, because you're a good test. Do you think they are fair and balanced?" And she said, "Well, do you think the Boston Globe is fair and balanced?" Well, there I think is the problem, is that she is equating the two. I said, "No, I don't read the Globe because it's fair and balanced. I read it for a lot of other reasons, and they're no more fair and balanced than the Herald, than the Traveler is." Whatever it's called. But I mean, it seems to me that whether or not cable is subject to FCC regulation, that they should be held to a higher level of responsibility than the print media. They aren't, obviously, in this person's mind. She equated the two. And she thinks, she doesn't mind that they're not fair and balanced, apparently.
Right. Well, the Globe is certainly not balanced on its editorial page. Right. And they shouldn't be. It's their responsibility to have an opinion. Right. But it's clearly set on the opinion page. Now, maybe once in a while, you'll find people who will think that a story should have run on the opinion page instead of where it did. But I contend if you watch Fox News, every story should be on the opinion page. Yeah. And none of them are portrayed as opinions.
I don't think in any way you can use the Globe as the other perspective. If you're saying, Fox News, it's totally not fair to the Globe. I mean, as you were saying, Mike, the Globe may be more liberal and progressive on its op-ed page, but clearly you're getting the full story, and even NPR. I mean, you're getting much more, debate, discussion. I think the people who represent all sides of the opinion in any given debate are much more educated. They're given a fair opportunity with Dick Gordon, whomever the host is. There's really no network out there that compares on the left with Fox News. And if it was, it would be talking about, George Bush's drug habit and being AWOL from the Guard, and that would be the drumbeat of that.
Right. There's no comparison.
There's no comparison.
Thank you. We're going to have to draw this to a close. It's an hour and a half's gone by at blistering speed. I'm happy to say plenty of lively discussion. Let me, in closing, thank everybody for being here. Paul Casey, thank you very much. Tony Chanella, Kim, thank you very much, and Peter and Michael.
Thank you.
And let me also take a moment to thank MoveOn.org and the directors and producers of Outfoxed, who so kindly have made this available. And there will be some full airings of Outfoxed on WinCam over the next coming weeks. And let me also put in a small thank heavens for cable access TV, where we have the opportunity to air our feelings about an issue that's important. And please tune in for the next episode of Talk of the Town, which I'm sure will be coming up soon. And watch out on your bulletin board and in the program directory to see what's coming next. Thanks again. Thanks for tuning in to WinCam's very own Talk of the Town.